The warning klaxon echoed through the corridors of Celestial Haven as Marcus Vale rushed toward Docking Bay 7, XT's toolkit clattering against his hip. 3 years of maintaining diplomatic facilities, and this was his first real first-contact scenario. The Zenithian delegation had arrived 6 hours ago. Their ship's power systems were already causing compatibility issues with the station's grid. "Vale, where's my status report?" Captain Torres's voice crackled through his communicator as Marcus jogged past a viewport showing the sleek, crystalline vessel attached to their docking port. 2 minutes out, Captain, Marcus replied, dodging a maintenance droid in the corridor. "Preliminary scans show their energy matrix operates on rotating frequency bands." It's like trying to plug a strobe light into a steady current. The docking bay doors hissed open, revealing a scene that made Marcus stop mid-stride. 3 figures stood near the Zenithian vessel, but his eyes immediately fixed on the woman in the center. Her skin held an iridescent quality that shifted between deep blue and silver as she moved, and her hair appeared to be made of actual crystalline strands that caught the bay's lighting and refracted it into tiny rainbows. "You are the engineer?" she asked, approaching with a fluid grace that seemed to defy the station's artificial gravity. Her voice carried musical undertones that made his chest vibrate. "Marcus Vale, diplomatic systems specialist," he managed, extending his hand in the traditional human greeting. She studied it for a moment before placing her own palm against his. Her skin felt warm and slightly electric, sending an unexpected tingle up his arm. "I am Quintara Vesh, primary cultural liaison for the Zenithian Accord," she replied, her violet eyes meeting his with an intensity that made him forget about power grids entirely. "We are grateful for your assistance with our vessel's integration." Marcus forced himself to focus on the technical problem. Though he found his attention constantly drifting to the way Quintara moved, the melodic quality of her explanations, and the occasional brush of her hand against his as they worked together at the diagnostic console. "Your people's technology is fascinating," he said, studying the readouts. "The frequency modulation creates a self-balancing energy system. It's actually more efficient than our static approach." "Efficiency through adaptation," Quintara agreed, standing close enough that he could catch a scent like ozone and jasmine. "We believe harmony comes from finding complementary rhythms rather than forcing conformity." As they worked through the evening, Marcus found himself drawn into conversations that went far beyond technical specifications. Quintara spoke of Zenithian philosophy, their reverence for the connections between all living things, and their unique approach to relationships. "And family structures? On Zenith, we form what you might call life bonds," she explained as they shared a meal in the station's observation lounge. "The stars stretching endlessly beyond the reinforced transparisteel. But these bonds are not restrictive, as human marriages often seem to be. They are foundations upon which larger family units can be built." "Larger how?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious, despite the flutter of something else in his chest. Quintara's lips curved in what might have been amusement. Zenithians believe that love and intimacy, when properly cultivated, can extend beyond a single pair, to encompass siblings, close friends, even honored allies. It creates stronger communities, better protection for the vulnerable, and deeper understanding between individuals. Marcus nearly choked on his synthesized coffee. "That sounds ... complicated." "Only if you approach it with the assumption that affection is a limited resource," Quintara replied gently. "We see it as something that grows when shared, like knowledge or music." Over the following weeks, as the Zenithian delegation extended their stay for ongoing negotiations, Marcus found every excuse to work with Quintara. Their professional collaborations slowly evolved into something deeper, their conversations extending long into the station's night cycle, as they explored the fascinating differences and surprising similarities between their species. It was during one such evening, as they worked together to upgrade the station's communication array to better interface with Zenithian vessels, that Quintara suddenly stopped what she was doing and turned to face him fully. "Marcus Vale," she said, her voice taking on a formal cadence he'd never heard before. "I find myself drawn to you in ways that transcend professional cooperation or cultural curiosity. By the customs of my people, I would like to propose a life bond." between us. Marcus stared at her, his heart hammering against his ribs. In the space of a few weeks, she had become the most important person in his life, though he'd been afraid to admit it even to himself. Yes, he said simply, and her crystalline hair seemed to shimmer with joy as she smiled. 3 months after their life-bonding ceremony, Marcus had grown accustomed to the curious stares from other station personnel. The Zenithian ritual had been beautiful, but alien crystalline chimes, bioluminescent flowers that responded to emotion, and vows spoken in harmonics that seemed to resonate in his very bones. Now, as he calibrated the new quantum processors in Engineering Bay 12, he wore the traditional Zenithian bond mark on his left temple, a small living crystal that pulsed gently with Quintara's heartbeat. Incoming transport from Zenith. Prime, the station's AI announced. Diplomatic clearance confirmed. Docking Bay 3. Marcus finished his work and made his way to meet Quintara at the bay. She stood waiting in her formal robes, but he could sense her nervous energy through their bond. The connection still amazed him, not telepathy exactly, but an awareness of her emotional state that felt as natural as his own heartbeat. The second wave delegation, he asked, taking her hand. Yes, including Sindra, Quintara replied, her crystalline hair dimming slightly. My younger sister. The transport bay doors opened, and Marcus immediately spotted the family resemblance. Sindra Vesh shared Quintara's iridescent blue skin and crystalline hair. Though hers was shorter and seemed to shift through more colors, deep purples and greens swirling through the blue, she was smaller than Quintara, with an artistic grace that made her movements look like a carefully choreographed dance. Honored Sister, Sindra said, bowing formally to Quintara before turning violet eyes to Marcus. An honored brother bond. I bring greetings from the homeworld and gratitude for your acceptance of our ways. Welcome to Celestial Haven, Marcus replied, noting the slight tremor in her voice. I hope your journey was comfortable, Ambassador. Corvain, a tall Zenithian with silver-streaked hair and the formal bearing of high rank, approached their group. Quintara Vesh, your union has been the subject of much discussion in the council chambers. There is great interest in how human Zenithian bonds might develop. We are honored by the council's attention, Quintara replied carefully. That evening, as they shared dinner in Marcus and Quintara's quarters, Sindra seemed more relaxed, asking curious questions about human customs and station life. But Marcus noticed how she occasionally paused mid-sentence, her eyes unfocusing, as if listening to something only she could hear. Sindra has recently reached maturity by our standards, Quintara explained later, after her sister had retired to the guest quarters. In Zenithian culture, this means she is ready for her first intimate experiences, but she requires proper guidance. Marcus poured himself another glass of the honey-like Zenithian wine they'd been sharing. Guidance from who? Quintara's expression became serious. Traditionally, from experienced family members who can teach her about genuine connection versus mere physical attraction. It's called the first guidance, a sacred responsibility, Marcus said slowly, sensing there was more. The honor typically falls to bonded pairs within the family unit, Quintara continued, watching his face carefully. The experienced partners help the young one understand the difference between true intimacy and the superficial encounters that might otherwise shape their understanding of relationships. Marcus set down his glass, his human upbringing warring with his growing understanding of Zenithian culture. You're saying that we would be expected to ... to share intimate knowledge with Sindra? Yes, Quintara confirmed. Both of us together? It is considered a profound act of family love and protection. Protection from what? Quintara's expression darkened. There are those among our people who would take advantage of inexperience. Sindra has already attracted unwanted attention from a male named Vorthok Rex. He possesses abilities that allow him to influence emotions and sensations from a distance. The council restricted his access to unmated females after several incidents, but he has been persistent in his pursuit of Sindra. Marcus felt a chill of understanding, and the first guidance would protect her how? By establishing genuine neural pathways based on real connection and choice, Quintara explained. Once those patterns are set, they become nearly impossible for others to override or manipulate. It is why the tradition exists, not merely for education, but for protection. Marcus stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars as he processed this information. His human instincts rebelled against the idea, but his growing understanding of Zenithian culture and his protective feelings towards Syndra created a complex emotional conflict. What happens if we don't participate in this tradition? Asked finally. Then Syndra remains vulnerable, Quintara replied simply. And Vorthok will likely attempt to claim her when he arrives with the next diplomatic rotation. When is that? Quintara's bond mark pulsed with anxiety. In 2 weeks? Marcus turned back to face his wife, seeing the worry etched in her features. This wasn't about some alien sexual custom. It was about protecting a young woman from a predator who possessed abilities that human law enforcement couldn't even comprehend. Tell me more about these neural pathways, he said, returning to sit beside Quintara, and about Vorthok's abilities. If we're going to protect Syndra, I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Quintara took his hands in hers, relief. Flooding through their bond, the Zenithian nervous system is more complex than yours, she began. Our capacity for emotional and sensory connection runs much deeper, but that also makes us vulnerable to those who would exploit it. As she explained the intricacies of Zenithian neural bonding and the threat Vorthok represented, Marcus felt his perspective shifting. It wasn't about human moral boundaries anymore. It was about family, protection, and standing against those who would harm the vulnerable. By the time Quintara finished her explanation, Marcus had made his decision. Syndra Vesh pressed her palms against her temples as another wave of disorientation washed over her. She sat in the station's arboretum, surrounded by earth plants and Zenithian crystal flowers. But the peaceful environment did nothing too quiet. The whispers at the edge of her consciousness, "Come to me, young flower. Your resistance only delays the inevitable." The voice wasn't audible. It bypassed her ears entirely, speaking directly into her mind with a familiarity that made her skin crawl. Vorthok Rex had been attempting to contact her for months, ever since the council had denied his formal bonding request. Now his mental intrusions were growing stronger. Syndra. Marcus's voice cut through the psychic static. She looked up to see him approaching with Quintara, both wearing expressions of concern. You missed our scheduled tour of the engineering sections. I apologize, Syndra managed, struggling to focus on their faces. I was distracted. Quintara knelt beside her sister, placing a hand on her forehead. The touch brought immediate relief. Quintara's presence always seemed to strengthen Syndra's mental defenses. He's reaching for you again. It's getting worse, Syndra admitted, leaning into her sister's touch. The whispers are constant now, and sometimes I see things that aren't there. Yesterday, I thought I saw him standing in my quarters, but when I blinked, it was just shadows. Marcus's expression hardened. Can you block him completely?
Not.
Without help? Quintara replied grimly, and not for much longer. The distance connection is weak but persistent. When he arrives in person, ... double quotes. She didn't need to finish the sentence. They all understood the implications. Security Chief Ramirez's voice crackled over the station's communication system. All senior staff to the command deck. Priority 1 situation.
Ow.
The three of them made their way quickly through the station corridors. In the command center, Captain Torres stood studying a tactical display that showed incoming vessels. We've got a problem, he announced as they entered a Zenithian ship just dropped out of hyperspace, single occupant, claiming diplomatic immunity. Vorthok Syndra whispered, her face paling to a lighter shade of blue. Ambassador Corvain stepped forward from where he'd been conferring with the captain. This is highly irregular.
Yes.
Vorthok Rex is not part of any scheduled delegation, and his diplomatic status was revoked after the council's investigation into his ... methods. He's still 2 days out, Captain Torres continued, but he's been broadcasting on Zenithian frequencies. Our translators can't make sense of most of it, but our sensors are picking up some kind of directed energy transmission aimed at the station. He's using his ship's communication array to amplify his mental reach, Quintara explained, her arm tightening protectively around Syndra's shoulders. The closer he gets, the stronger his influence will become. Syndra suddenly gasped, her eyes rolling back as her body went rigid. Through the bond mark on his temple, Marcus felt an echo of foreign thoughts pressing against his consciousness, images of submission, whispers of surrender, and an overwhelming sense of inevitability. "Fight it," Quintara commanded, pressing both hands to Syndra's temples. "Remember who you are. Remember your choices." Slowly, Syndra's eyes focused again, but she was trembling. He's so strong. I can feel him pulling at my thoughts, trying to rewrite them. If he gets much closer." Dr. Melissa Park, the station's chief psychologist, had been monitoring the situation from her post at the science station. "Captain, with your permission, I'd like to examine Ms. Fesh. What she's describing sounds like a form of psychological manipulation that might respond to human therapeutic techniques." "Anything that might help," Torres agreed. In the medical bay, Doctor Park ran a series of neural scans on Syndra, while Marcus and Quintara watched anxiously. The results painted a disturbing picture. There are foreign neural patterns overlaying her natural brainwave activity, Dr. Park explained, highlighting sections of the brain scan. "It's like someone is slowly rewriting her neural pathways from the outside. If this continues, these imposed patterns could become permanent." "The first guidance tradition," Quintara said suddenly. "If we can establish stronger connections based on genuine choice and affection, those pathways should override Vorthek's artificial ones." Dr. Park looked between them curiously. "What exactly does this tradition involve?" Quintara explained the ritual, while Marcus watched Syndra, who was lying on the medical bed with monitoring devices attached to her head. Even unconscious, she occasionally twitched as if fighting off invisible attackers. "From a neurological standpoint, it could work, Doctor," Park admitted after hearing the explanation. "Forming new neural pathways through positive emotional and physical experiences might indeed override artificially imposed patterns. But the timing is critical. Once his influence becomes too strong, she may not be capable of genuine choice anymore." "How long do we have?" Marcus asked. Dr. Park studied the readouts from Syndra's neural scan. "Based on the rate of pattern overlay, I'd estimate less than 48 hours before the imposed pathways become dominant. After that, ... She shook her head. Marcus looked at Quintara, seeing his own determination reflected in her violet eyes. They'd known this moment was coming, had been preparing for it. But now that the timeline had compressed, the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. "We need to prepare the ritual chamber," Quintara said firmly. "And we need to do it tonight." Syndra's eyes fluttered open at the sound of her sister's voice. "I can hear him laughing," she whispered, fear evident in her voice. "He says it doesn't matter what you do. Says I'm already his." Marcus took her hand, feeling the electric warmth of Zenithian's skin against his human palm. "He's wrong," he said with quiet conviction. "You're not his. You're family, and we protect family." As if in response to his words, the medical bay's lights flickered, and for a moment, they all heard it distant. Mocking laughter that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Vorthok was getting closer. The secure medical bay hummed with quiet activity as Dr. Park made final adjustments to the neural monitoring equipment. Marcus stood near the viewport, watching Vorthek's ship grow larger against the starfield, now less than 18 hours away. Behind him, Quintara was preparing the ritual space according to Zenithian custom, arranging crystalline formations that would amplify and focus the emotional connections they were about to create. "The readings are stabilizing," Dr. Park announced, studying Syndra's brain activity on the monitors. "But the foreign patterns are still growing stronger. Whatever you're planning to do, it needs to happen soon." Syndra lay on the medical bed, her crystalline hair spread across the pillow like scattered diamonds. The sedatives had helped quiet Vorthak's mental intrusions, but Marcus could see the strain in her face even while unconscious. Her bond mark, a smaller, dimmer crystal than Quintara's, pulsed erratically with each wave of psychic interference. "The preparation is complete," Quintara announced. Having finished arranging the ritual crystals in a complex pattern around the bed, "Dr. Park, your equipment will not interfere with the Zenithian neural harmonics. It's all passive monitoring," the doctor assured her. "I'll be able to track the changes in real time, but won't interfere with the process. Marcus approached the bed where Syndra was beginning to stir. Her violet eyes opened slowly, focusing on his face with effort. Marcus, I can feel him getting closer. His voice is so loud now. That's why we're here, Marcus said gently, taking her hand. The ritual will create new pathways, stronger ones based on choice and genuine connection. It should override his influence. Syndra looked between Marcus and Quintara, her expression mixing gratitude with nervousness. I understand the theory, but that's why the tradition exists, Quintara said softly, sitting on the other side of the bed. To ensure first experiences are guided by love and protection, rather than manipulation or exploitation. Dr. Park cleared her throat diplomatically. I'll monitor from the adjacent room. Call if you need anything. She stepped into the observation chamber, leaving the three of them alone with the soft glow of the Zenithian crystals. What followed was unlike anything Marcus had imagined. The Zenithian first guidance ritual was simultaneously physical and spiritual. A careful orchestration of touch, emotion, and mental connection that Quintara guided with infinite patience. Through there, Bondmark Marcus could feel not just Quintara's emotions, but gradually Syndra's as well. As new neural pathways formed and strengthened. Focus on the sensations, Quintara instructed her sister softly. Feel how different this is from the artificial intrusions. This is choice. This is safety. This is family. Protecting family. Marcus watched the monitors as Dr. Park's equipment tracked the changes in Syndra's brain activity. The artificial patterns Vorthok had imposed were being steadily overwritten by new connections based on genuine experience and emotional trust. Midway through the ritual, the lights flickered again, and a voice filled the chamber, not through the communication system, but directly into their minds. Foolish creatures. Do you think your pathetic ritual can protect her from me? She will. Be mine, as was always intended. Vorthek's mental assault struck like a sledgehammer, trying to shatter the delicate connections they were building. Marcus felt the alien presence trying to worm its way into his thoughts, bringing with it images of dominance and submission, whispers that he was betraying his human nature by participating in such ceremonies. But the bonds they'd been forming created a protective network. Quintara's love for both Marcus and her sister, Marcus's determination to protect his new family, and Syndra's growing confidence in her own choices combined into something stronger than Vorthak's manipulations. He can't reach me, Syndra whispered in wonder, her voice stronger than it had been in days. The connections you've helped me build, they're like armor against his intrusions. The alien presence pushed harder, and Marcus felt a moment of blazing pain as Vorthok tried to break through their united defenses. But the pain was shared among all three of them, and sharing it somehow made it bearable. This is not over, Vorthek's voice snarled before withdrawing abruptly. In the sudden silence that followed, Dr. Park's voice came through the intercom. Phenomenal. The artificial neural patterns are completely gone, replaced by organic connections that show all the signs of permanent integration. Whatever you just did, it worked. Syndra sat up slowly, her crystalline hair now glowing with a steady, confident light. I feel ... different, stronger, like myself again, but more so. Quintara embraced her sister, tears of relief streaming down her face. The pathways are set. Vorthok can no longer rewrite your neural patterns without destroying the connections entirely, which would damage his own mind in the process. Marcus felt a profound sense of completion, as if something that had been out of balance in the universe had finally been set right. Through his bond mark, he could now sense Syndra as well as Quintara, not as intimately, but as a clearly defined presence in his awareness. They had become, in the truest Zenithian sense, a family unit. What happens when he arrives? Marcus asked. Now we face him from a position of strength, Quintara replied, her expression hardening with determination. And we make sure he never threatens anyone again. Dr. Park entered the room, studying her readings with scientific fascination. The neural integration is remarkable. You've essentially created a defensive network that should be immune to external manipulation. But are you sure he won't try other methods? Through the viewport, Vorthak's ship continued its approach, now visible as more than just a distant point of light. Marcus looked at his expanded family, his bondmate and her sister, both strong and determined, and felt ready. For whatever confrontation was coming, let him come, Marcus said quietly. We'll be ready. Part 5. Confrontation and Resolution. The main conference hall of Celestial Haven gleamed under the light of artificial stars. As delegates from 7 worlds gathered for the formal reception welcoming the extended Zenithian diplomatic mission, Marcus adjusted his dress uniform uncomfortably, still not used to formal events. While beside him, Quintara radiated confidence in her ceremonial robes of deep blue and silver. Syndra stood with them, transformed from the vulnerable young woman of days past into someone who carried herself with quiet strength. "Remember," Quintara murmured as they moved through the crowd of diplomats, "Vorthak will likely attempt a public confrontation. He's counting on our reluctance to cause a diplomatic incident." "Let him try," Syndra replied, her voice steady. Through the family bond they now shared, Marcus could feel her genuine confidence. The neural pathways they'd helped her establish had indeed created an unbreachable defense against psychic manipulation. Captain Torres approached their group, his expression grim. "Vorthak's ship docked an hour ago," he's claiming diplomatic. "Immunity and demanding an audience with the Zenithian delegation? Ambassador Corvain is trying to stall, but we can't keep him out much longer." "Then let him come," Marcus said. "We're ready," as if summoned by his words. The conference hall's main door slid open. Vorthak Rex entered with the bearing of someone accustomed to intimidating others into submission. He was tall even by Zenithian standards, with dark blue skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and crystalline hair that moved with a life of its own. His violet eyes swept the room until they found Syndra, and Marcus felt a chill at the predatory satisfaction in that gaze. "Ah, the human Zenithian family unit," Vorthak said, his voice carrying clearly across the reception hall as delegates turned to watch. "How, progressive of the council to allow such experiments." Several nearby diplomats shifted uncomfortably. Rumors of the unusual bonding arrangement had spread throughout the diplomatic community, and many were curious to see how it would be received. Diplomat Rex, Ambassador Corvain, stepped forward, his formal bearing barely concealing his distaste. "Your presence here is unexpected. The council did not authorize your participation in these negotiations." "I have come to correct an error," Vorthak replied smoothly, his gaze never leaving Syndra. "Young Syndra Vesh was promised to me before. These irregularities occurred. I claim my right of prior bond." "That claim was rejected by the council," Quintara interjected, moving protectively closer to her sister. "Your methods were deemed unacceptable." Vorthak's smile revealed teeth that were slightly too sharp. "Methods? I merely helped young Syndra understand her true desires. Watch." The psychic assault came without warning, but instead of targeting Syndra directly, Vorthak struck at Marcus and Quintara simultaneously. Pain exploded through Marcus's skull as foreign thoughts tried to force their way into his mind. Images of inadequacy, whispers that he was an outsider who had no place in Zenithian culture, sensations of doubt about his worthiness to be part of their family unit, but the neural connections they'd forged held strong. The pain was shared among all 3 of them, distributed through their family bond until it became manageable. More importantly, the artificial emotions Vorthak was trying to impose couldn't take root in pathways that had been established through genuine choice and affection. "Interesting," Vorthak mused, apparently unaware that his attack had failed. "Your minds are more resistant than expected. But no matter, Syndra. Come to me now. You know you cannot resist forever." Syndra stepped forward, and for a moment Marcus feared Vorthak had succeeded. But her expression was calm, determined, and completely free of the confusion that had plagued her for weeks. "You're right," she said clearly, her voice carrying too. "Every delegate in the hall. I cannot resist forever. But I don't need to, because there's nothing to resist. You have no power over me, Vorthak Rex." Vorthak's confident expression flickered. "Impossible. I've been shaping your thoughts for months. You belong to me." "You shaped nothing," Syndra replied, her crystalline hair now glowing with fierce pride. "You imposed artificial patterns on an untrained mind, But those patterns are gone, placed by something you could never understand: genuine connections, based on choice, trust, and love. The Zenithian's face contorted with rage as he launched a direct psychic attack at Syndra. The effort was so intense that several sensitive species in the hall cried out in sympathetic pain. But Syndra stood unmoved, protected by the neural network that linked her to Marcus and Quintara. "This is impossible," Vorthok snarled, his controlled demeanor finally cracking. "No one can resist my influence. I am a master of the mental arts." "You're a parasite," Marcus said, stepping beside Syndra. "Someone who preys on the vulnerable because you're too weak to form genuine connections with anyone." Dr. Park, who had been monitoring the situation from the medical station, chose that moment to step forward. "Actually, Mr. Rex, what you've just demonstrated is a clear violation of several interspecies treaties regarding mental manipulation. I've recorded the entire exchange, including detailed neural scans showing your attempted psychic assault." Ambassador Corvain moved swiftly to Vorthok's side, flanked by station security. "Vorthok Rex, by the authority of the Zenithian High Council, and under the jurisdiction of this neutral station, you are under arrest for unlawful mental manipulation, violation of diplomatic immunity, and attempted coercion of a protected individual." As security led the snarling Vorthok away, the conference hall erupted in murmurs of astonishment and approval. Several delegates approached Marcus Quintara and Syndra to offer congratulations and express interest in learning more about their unique family structure. "Well," Captain Torres said, approaching their group with obvious relief, "that went better than expected. No diplomatic incidents, no injured parties, and one dangerous individual permanently removed from circulation." Ambassador Corvain nodded approvingly. "The Council will be most interested in your report, Quintara Vesh. This incident has demonstrated both the value of cross-species cooperation and the importance of protecting our traditional safeguards against those who would abuse mental abilities." As the reception continued around them, Marcus found himself standing with Quintara and Syndra near the great viewport, watching the stars' wheels slowly past as the station rotated. Through their shared bond, he could feel their contentment, their sense of completion as a family unit. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked. "Do we stay here? Go to Zenith? Return to Earth?" "Now we build something new," Quintara replied, taking his hand while her other arm encircled Syndra's shoulders. "A bridge between cultures, a demonstration that love and family can transcend species boundaries." Syndra smiled, her crystalline hair catching the starlight and casting rainbow patterns on the deck around them. "And we make sure no one else has to face what Vorthok represented alone." The first guidance tradition exists for protection. Perhaps it's time other species learned similar safeguards. Marcus looked out at the vast expanse of space, thinking about the future they were building together. A few months ago, he'd been a simple engineer maintaining diplomatic equipment. Now he was part of something larger, a family that bridged two worlds. A living example of what cooperation and understanding could accomplish. Through the bond marks they all wore, he felt the deep contentment of his expanded family, and knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. In the distance, Vorthok's ship was being escorted away by station security, carrying its defeated occupant toward a trial that would likely result in the permanent revocation of his mental abilities. But Marcus barely spared it a thought. Attention was focused on the future, and on the family that had chosen him as surely as he had chosen them. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of infinite possibilities.